Hey guys, what's up? Daniel here from darkgadgets.com. Today we're going to be doing a review of the iPad mini. For starters, the iPad mini has a 7.9-inch IPS display with a resolution of 1024 by 768, which is the same as the original iPad and iPad 2, but since it's shrunk down, you get 163 pixels per inch instead of 132 on the iPad and iPad 2. It doesn't look that much better, but there is a huge difference between this display and the iPad 3's 264 pixels per inch Retina display, and some other tablets of its range like the Nexus 7. But really, whether or not you'll like the display will depend on how much time you've actually spent using Retina displays or high pixel count devices. As far as the looks go, this is one of the best designs for a tablet thus far. At the top, we have a headphone jack as well as the sleep and wake button and microphone, then the lightning connector and speakers at the bottom. The speakers are stereo and actually sound quite good and some of the best on an iPad thus far. And following the edge to the top right, we have the volume rocker and mute switch. As far as the cameras go, we have a front-facing HD camera for FaceTime, and then on the back we have a 1080p HD camera which takes really good pictures, but it all really depends on the lighting conditions. If the room is too dark, the pictures look super grainy and horrible, but when there's a lot of sunlight, both picture and video will look pretty damn good. It's really one of the best cameras on any tablet, especially compared to those cameras on tablets around the same price range. Around the front of the glass we have an angled aluminum bezel like that of the iPhone 5, which looks amazing and just adds to the looks of the iPad mini, which overall just feels really solid and it's a joy to hold. Once you first get your hands on an iPad mini and hold it, I think the first thought that goes through your head is this is just perfect, because the size is just perfect. You can hold it with one hand, you can hold it with two hands. It's really just great for kids and adults to use. But the best part here is that it doesn't feel like a lower priced product in your hands. Apple really did a good job of making it feel like you have a really premium tablet compared to that of a Nexus 7 or a Kindle Fire. It's almost perfect in design. The iPad mini comes in slate black and white silver, both of which look amazing, but I opted for the white because it just looks classy and clean like the iPhone 5, and it's also less prone to fingerprints and scratches. Unlike the bigger iPad, the iPad mini has very careful attention to detail like that of the iPod Touch and the iPhone 5, but this also indicates that we're not too far away from a redesigned 10-inch iPad. The biggest difference between the iPad and the iPad mini is that the iPad mini is extremely easy to hold and feels almost lighter than the package it came in. It is 0.28 inches thin and weighs 0.68 pounds, which make it the slimmest and lightest tablet in the 7-inch range. It's also thinner than the iPhone 5 and seems almost as thin as the new iPod Touch. All of this combined with the screen size and its aspect ratio make it just perfect for comics, magazines, and reading apps, as well as productivity. I never really found myself unable to enjoy a magazine or a book, but I did find myself wishing that it had a Retina display. The device has very thin bezels, which wasn't really a problem for me, and I actually preferred them over the regular iPad's bezel. But if you have large hands, Apple added finger ejection technology into iOS on the iPad mini that's context dependent, and it actually does a really good job. If you want larger bezels, you can always turn it into landscape mode, in which the thicker top and bottom bezel come in handy when viewing videos and playing games. The mini truly feels like a large iPod Touch, which is by no means a bad thing. I mean, it won't easily fit in your pocket, but it fits in places where you'd put a book, like a small bag and a large coat pocket. One of the most important things about the iPad mini is that it runs almost all the iPad apps without any problems, and it also has pretty much the same battery life. It lasted me 2 days of casual use and about 5 hours when playing games and TV shows, but it really depends on what games and apps you're running. In case you were wondering, it takes slightly over 5 hours for an iPad mini to fully charge. The smaller form factor of the iPad mini allows you to type in portrait as you would on an iPhone or iPod Touch. Although it was okay, I ended up always using landscape when responding to emails or writing an essay, since I could reach without having to stretch my thumbs too much. You can of course use the smart cover and use it at an angle on a table, which might be even more efficient for some. Aside from that, typing does require some getting used to since the keyboard is neither big nor small, but it's still better than most tablets of that size range. There are many tablets out in the market today that cost considerably less than the iPad mini, like the Kindle Fire HD, Nook HD, and Nexus 7, all three of which have much higher and denser pixel counts. One thing I do want to mention is that the iPad mini also seems to have the dullest screen of any Apple iOS device this year. It just doesn't look as bright or beautiful as all the other devices. And you can really tell the difference when you compare it to another iOS device when you're holding it side by side. Everything aside, what you're really paying for here is the great design and access to iOS. This isn't really a tablet that should be compared to $200 tablets. Apple made this to give an option of another size, not so it would compete with affordable tablets. I personally love the design and form factor, but the screen is a complete letdown. Enough of a letdown to make me want to wait until Apple releases a second one with a Retina display. Again, this is just me, and you might not feel the same way. Most people won't even notice the display and could care less about how the display looks. If the iPad mini had a Retina display and maybe a newer A6 processor and a slightly lower price, it would have been the must-have Apple gadget of the year. Overall, the iPad mini is awesome and fun to use, and you won't want to put it down. If you're looking for a cheap tablet for media consumption, then the iPad mini isn't something you should be looking into purchasing. On the other hand, if you've been wanting an iPad for a long time, the iPad mini will be perfect, not only because it's cheaper, but it's also perfectly portable. The iPad mini might just be the tablet you've been waiting for, but before purchasing it, remember this. Is it something you really need?